Hey, it's Rob Hatch, and this is How I Use That. It's a show where we interview entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, business owners on how they use specific apps to solve problems. Not to walk you through in just a tutorial that you could get anywhere, but specifically how they use it to run their business, specific use cases. So today, my guest is Seth David, who's the owner of Nerd Enterprises. I'm going to bring Seth in here. Hey, Seth, how are you?
Very good. How are you?
Great. Thanks so much for joining me. And today we're going to walk through an app called The Brain, which you recently introduced me to. So I'm excited for this one. Went so far as to shoot a video recently about it, and I had to talk to you about it. So really glad that you're here to walk us through that. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about your business and what it is that you do when you're not on my show. How's that?
So that's great. First of all, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. I'm excited to be here. I mean, man, I've known Chris for so long, and then when you got involved, I've followed you guys together as a team for so long, and it's so cool to just get the opportunity to do things like this with you and Chris. So thank you for that. As far as what I do, my superpower, I like to think, is taking complex concepts and applications and making them simple for people, right? Looking at people's problems and seeing how we can solve them, and then using the apps that are best for their particular use case to solve those problems. It started with QuickBooks and then QuickBooks Online, but over the years, I figured out that there's a lot of other tools I'm using to run my business really well. And after a while, I just kind of frankly get bored of just doing QuickBooks videos all the time, and so I started doing videos on other tools, and lo and behold, now even within the accounting field, I am looked at even by companies like Intuit as a quote unquote productivity expert. For me, it's just I'm in my sandbox. I'm playing with the toys that I love to play with all day, and it's living the dream.
Nice. And you've got a ton of videos on YouTube, for how you use different apps. You've done those over the years, and just continually pushing out some incredibly helpful stuff. So people should definitely search up Nerd Enterprises on YouTube as well. Before we get into things, if anyone's here watching live, for those of you who are watching live, feel free to leave a comment, say hello, whatever it is, as we're going along. If you have a question that you want to ask Seth as he's explaining this app, which we're going to talk about, is called The Brain. As he's walking through, if you have any questions as he goes through, just leave a comment and we'll bring it in. So I'm going to have you share your screen, sir.
All right.
And then I'll pop that up.
All right. Share screen. And I think I've got the right one here. And boom. And we should be seeing Seth David's operating system.
All right. Hold on. Let me bring it in. And I've minimized things so much that there we go. Add to stream. There we go.
All right.
Right there. We see it. So this is the overview of The Brain.
So this is The Brain, and this is literally, and by the way, I love this format, how I use that, because it's, you brought up a good point, and inspired by you, the reason I think you got introduced to this product was inspired by this concept that you offered. Rather than just do a tutorial on how to use something, I did a series on 5 different tools, The Brain included, that I use, and just kind of showing people how I use it. And I've already gotten great feedback on YouTube from that video by people saying it's really nice to see the actual examples of how you're using it, because it gives people ideas for how they might use it. And so I think I'm going to do more in this kind of format, actually.
I think it's great. Obviously, it started to show about it because so often you just want to be able to be inspired by the way in which someone uses it, not just have a straight up tutorial. And I think you were saying before, The Brain offers a lot of webinars. When we were talking before we went live, and it's really centered around use cases. And I think that's where people get inspired. Even if they don't use the same app, it gives them a new idea to play around with an app that they currently use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, right off the bat, this might even look very overwhelming to people because there's just all this stuff going on, right? And so I want to encourage people to not worry. I want your attention focused on what's right in the center of my screen, where it says, Seth David's operating system. And so that is called a thought. and that's what I've got selected. This is my home thought. And on the right is the notepad, so to speak, that gets included with every thought that you ever create using the brain. And right off the bat, you can start to see, because this is, and the reason I call this my operating system is that it's just that. It's when you think about what is an operating system, if I think about Windows or I think about, Mac, iOS, the operating system, the system by which I operate, it's how I access everything, right? When I fire up my computer and the operating system loads, that operating system is what gives me access to the things I want to use, the tools, right? If I want to open
Right.
Excel on my computer, I can click my Windows icon up here, I can type Excel, and boom, there's the Excel app, and I can open it up in seconds, right? And right off the bat, what I want to show you, as you can see on the right, I've got, because this is like my home thought, this is just high level stuff. You can see I've got it formatted, right, where I've got this subheader called opt-ins, right? This is a note I made to myself earlier this year when thinking about, how I want to kind of do things in 2021. And you can read what's on my screen. Need to change the thank you page to invite people to tag themselves. And so I use this to make high level notes, my mission statement, right? I'm on a mission to learn everything I can about anything I can, and then share what I've learned with anyone who cares to have it, right? It's very broad, but it kind of sums up what I do and what I love to do, and so on. And then Rob, as you and I have already discussed, going into this year, I created a whole new format around my Friday Zoom In with Seth David and Friends series, and
Yeah.
I created monthly themes. So you can see this is where that started. I wrote this probably like right on New Year's Day, even very likely, just sitting around my house, enjoying the day off. And for me, a day off is doing stuff like this. So I said, okay, January's process and workflow design month. February's ClickUp month. We're about to finish the ClickUp course. So I started mapping out my year. March is G Suite month. Then they went and changed it to Google Workspace. So I'm going to, I had to actually update my titles on all of that everywhere recently. But so this is a notepad basically that goes with the thought. And, at some point I might just clean this all out or just make a copy of it, move it somewhere else so I can, because again, this is my home thought. So this is meant for very high level thinking, nothing too detailed or specific, right?
So is this kind of, when you say this is your home thought, is the brain something you bring up first thing in your day? Is that where you
Definitely.
begin?
Yeah. Especially once I made the decision to call this and treat it as my operating system, that's when I started to form the habit. Every day, first thing when I fire up my computer, I click right over here on the Brain 12, right? And as you can see, there's different versions. 12 is the newest one, version 12.
Right.
I always, and whenever they roll out something like that, they always roll it out in beta first, and they give, I guess, I don't know if they give it to everybody, but I always get a notification giving me the option of upgrading to the beta early. And of course, I dive right in because I want to see all the new toys that there are to play with, right? A couple of other quick high-level things on how a thought works. Over here, you can see where it says this is a test.xlsx.
Yep.
This is a way I can actually attach files to the brain. If I click this, it's going to open right up as a spreadsheet in Excel. There's nothing in here because it was literally just me testing the new way of attaching files to a thought. Okay. And over here, I've got another attachment in the form of a link. So if I click this, it goes into, this is some offer I created in Kajabi there. There was like a thank you payment plan for my bulletproof bookkeeping offer. So I linked that here because at the time that I did this, and I don't even remember when exactly, but it was a way of giving myself a link that I was going to need frequently at very close reach, at my fingertips. If I need this, I can grab it quickly.
So this is where it goes beyond being a mind map, really. It isn't just a tool for thinking through a problem, but a way to connect you to the things that are most important or top of mind.
100%. And to give you a little bit of a deeper dive into that concept, as I mentioned and scrolled through here and told you, this is the ClickUp course month. So let's say now somebody just emailed me and said, hey, Seth, I know there's only a week left, but I still want to sign up for the last free live webinar. And I want, because there's also a workbook and other stuff that goes with it. So the bottom line, I need to bang out a quick email reply to that person and just drop a link in there. So watch how this works. The key to this whole tool is, this is a knowledge base. We're going to feed it with knowledge every single day of our lives once we start using it and making the commitment that it's going to become our own operating system. And you can see I recently searched you out, right? And I'll show people that in a minute. But so now if I start typing ClickUp, and I've got a number of things in here that match the search of ClickUp, Every app that I use is in here as its own thought, and then I can provide more context about how and where I use that app. But if you look down here, notice I have, not only do I have a thought for a course in ClickUp, but notice it's lit up in yellow, right? So if I click on it, first of all, that makes it easy to find, and it's set up that way right now because it's something I do frequently need to access. And the minute that I do, notice up here, all the resources. First of all, they let you link to a local folder. So this is a local folder. You can tell from the icon that when I click on it, will launch Windows Explorer right to the local version of the folder where I've got all the files and resources that I need to access around the development of this course. So in one click, I'm right in. And this is, by the way, a folder in Google Drive. I use Drive File Stream, which means I've got the local version of the folder, and I've also got the web version of the folder, which may not even be here because once I'm in the local version, all I really need to do is find any native Google document. So week 1, there's the GDoc. Right click, open with Google Drive. Although for some strange reason, it's not giving me the option.
So now, as you're getting further and further, I'm noticing like and I think we said this a little bit. I said this to you a little bit beforehand. Your brain sort of has this, seems to have this ability, not this app, but your personal brain has this natural ability to organize information in a way. I mean, this, not to say that this comes easy or that this isn't some work, but you know, you clearly have mapped out layers of the type of information you want, how you want it served up, which is what I love about this. It's sort of both intuitive, but also, you know, behind it, you can have it be stacked with all the things that you need. But it looks like it takes some work to get there. And you know, as I shared with you, my tendency is to want to have the whole thing built out, or you know, trying to envision how this is all going to work. Tell me about the work that goes into putting all that stuff in there, all the links behind the thoughts.
So, you know, at first you just start playing with it, right? It starts out just, let me play with it. Let me see what it can do. And then obviously it's helpful if I have a specific use case for something I want to do with it, right? Because then you can start learning how to use it and build your sort of process around that use case. And as I mentioned with you in our previous discussions, my suggestion, if you really want to kind of dive into something like this, is first outline your process. First of all, identify what problem am I trying to solve with it, right? But forget about the tool for a minute. Just outline the process. What am I trying to solve? I just gave you a couple of use cases for really what I like to call extreme bookmarking, right? Because I have a lot of different resources that I create on the web, and those resources have context, like the links I need around a ClickUp course, because there's the link for the opt-in form. I showed you the folder. We've got, you know, here's the pipeline. This is for me, but this takes me into, if I right click and choose open, it's going to open a browser tab. And I'll just pull this down onto my screen for a second. But this is literally taking me right to the back end of the pipeline that I've created for this course in Kajabi, right? So it's just really quick access to resources that I need quick access to, right? So how do I build this? You know, it's like, you know, there's certain tools that you can get into, and there's a very clear and specific use case for it. And so it's very straightforward. I dive in, I start, you know, like if I want to use a simple project management tool, there are things I can use. It used to be Wunderlist years ago, then Microsoft bought it, and now there's ZenKit to do. But I think of tools like that where it's like very straightforward. I create a task or a to-do. I can write some notes. I can even attach some files, set a due date, and I'm done. That's basically all I need to do with it, right?
Right.
And you can use the brain that way. So maybe that's a good place to start. If you're just trying to organize, what do I need to remember to do from one day to the next? You can do that with ClickUp. In fact, case in point, again, I've got this lit up in yellow. Notice up here where it's got a parent thought that's called today, which is also in yellow. This looks like a thought, but actually, as you get into the brain, you'll notice there's several different elements. You have thoughts, and then you have tags, which is like any system that has tags. You can attach multiple tags. It's a way of labeling things. And then you have thought types. And the thought types is where this gets interesting, because if I click here on where it says a course in ClickUp, you can see that I've associated the thought type that's called today. And when I do that in the brain, and this took me a while to learn, I didn't learn this the first time I played with it. I learned this by playing with it and also watching some videos that these guys do at the brain and watching that somebody else was doing this. And the first thing that happened was I saw that he had his thoughts really well color coded. And I'm like, how did he do that?
Right.
And then I said, okay, I'm going to watch this video. And I scrubbed back on the player of the video several times until I saw the moment in the video. And I don't think he was trying to explain that specifically. So I had to scrub it out of the video, like how he did that. And then I realized there was a thought type that he had defined that had the same color sequence. And so then I said, oh, let me go play. I think I understand how that works. Let me try it though. And sure enough, when I created the thought type called today, and I assigned it its color scheme of red and yellow, right?
Yep.
All of a sudden I figured out what these things did. And then so once I set that up, I noticed that as soon as I assigned something, the thought type of today, it adopted that color scheme, which is a really slick feature.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
Because as you can see, things light up really quickly.
And you can go back, that sort of solves that problem of worrying that you're creating something wrong. But when you've created maybe the new system, when you figured out, oh, I could color code things, then from that time forward, or anytime you encounter that thought again, you could recategorize it, and it just picks it up, is what
all
you're
I have
saying.
to do is, so let's say, so after this Friday is the last day of this course. So let's say it's now next Monday. And I say, okay, well, this course is over with, but there's going to be some follow-up to do, but it's not such an immediate priority. So, and I've already obviously defined all this, so I can click in here and I can change it for today, from today to, let's just say, this week. And as soon as I change the thought type, it swaps it out. It adopts the new color scheme. So using thought types is a great way to create color schemes that you can use to visually prioritize things, right? And so, because that's my problem, because as you saw, if I go to the home thought, which is by clicking on the home icon there, there's so many thoughts in here. It's like, how do I make sure that the things that really need my attention can get my attention? And that's what I learned is how I do it, right? And that's the key. But like I said, you're not going to learn that right away necessarily. Like now that people have watched this, they're going to know. But as soon as I saw that, it blew wide open another idea, which is, I don't know if you, Rob, or how many people, maybe watching this are familiar with David Allen's getting things done methodology.
Yep, absolutely.
So as soon as I saw this, it blew it wide open that, oh, now I understand exactly how to start applying his methodology. So I created a parent thought type called at when.
Oh,
and
yeah.
now we have the piles today, tomorrow, this week, next week, soon, or someday, and then done, right? And so, and as you can see here, these are thought types. I've color coded them so that, as you just saw demonstrated, the instant I change the priority of something by changing its thought type, it assigns the right color, so it gets my attention the exact way I need it to.
I love that in terms of decision making. I was, it was a couple of newsletters ago. We get so overwhelmed with where to prioritize something, and I often say it's either sort of it's a yes, no, or a not right now, right? Mm-hmm. And the idea comes up: should I use the brain? Should I even try this app out? And one of those three answers is going to apply. Yes, I should. So then it becomes a then what and how do I want to organize or prioritize it? No, that's pretty easy. And then yes, but not right now is or not right now. It's just a matter of checking in when. You can schedule it to review in a month. I have a little Google reminder each month to check my not right now ideas, basically, that I want to make sure that they were worthy enough to make the list, but really didn't rise to the level of me diverting any time or attention to.
Right.
That's really cool.
And if you really want people's heads to spin, just so you know, I have a version of this in ClickUp, which is the tool I'm teaching this month as of this recording. And but I'm probably little by little going to move it over to here. Not because I think this is better than ClickUp. It's just I like playing in the brain. I like hanging out in here. It's it's fun. It sounds maybe trivial or silly even, but the truth is it's very much not trivial or silly, because if I'm going to want an app that I'm using, or a resource for that matter, that I need to be prepared to spend a lot of time in, it should be fun to use. It should be something where I feel it feels rewarding to be in here using it, so that the first thing I want to do every time I turn on my computer is click on that icon and fire up the brain.
I love that, because you're absolutely right. One, it should be fun. It should be interesting. It should serve a purpose. I mean, there's the business purpose or the organizational purpose, the storage of all this information and the interconnectedness of it. But yeah, I mean, it should be something that is enjoyable when you're there as well, just to kind of feed that. Otherwise, it's just going to be drudgery.
Right.
So how is this one? I think one of the challenges for a lot of folks is hopping from app to app,
Mm-hmm.
right? But you've somehow made this the gateway for all of that. So you still have, you still use QuickBooks, you still use Kajabi, you still use ClickUp, you use all of these other places but this is your portal for all that.
Yeah. So if I go here to apps vetted, and by the way, this whole concept came about from I have a group that's very similar to Owner Insider that's comprised of accountants and bookkeepers. It's very much like your group, though, where it's a mentoring group, and we have a great community, just like you guys have. In fact, I would love to switch them over to Mighty Networks from Slack, but I think they'd kill me if I did that, because I love Mighty Networks that you guys are using. Anyway, so one of them had reached out to me, and by the way, I'm saying this on purpose so that people can think about this, like how even my use of a tool like this evolves based on feedback that I get from my community. And this has nothing to, like, they're never going to see this. This is not for them, but I want to make this connection for people that the reason this came about specifically, where it says apps that are vetted, is somebody it's called 97 and Up, in my 97 and Up group reached out to me one day and said, we talk about so many apps around here, and I would love it if there was a resource or some place where I could go to see which apps are the ones that you've vetted, meaning you've used it, played with it, trialed it, and you really stand behind it, versus which ones maybe you're just playing with and researching. And I said, you know what, that's brilliant. And so I went in here and I started building that structure out here. So here's apps vetted. And by the way, this is by no means a complete list. And that's the point, is the brain at large it's always going to be a work in progress. And I want to go back to that comment I made earlier, where you have to be prepared and plan that you're going to just feed it knowledge every day. The more knowledge you feed your brain, which again is a knowledge base, the more powerful a resource it's going to become. It's almost like it feeds back to you what you give it, right? So I almost want to say, if you're going to use a tool like this, set aside time, go into your calendar, iCal or Google Calendar or whatever you use, and plan out time, maybe even an hour a day, especially in the beginning, where that time is going to be dedicated to, I'm not going to be responding to emails or texts or Slack messages or anything. It's going to be an hour of me really focused and playing with my new toy that's going to serve as a good tool. Because now, again, I have apps vetted, and so I can go in here and I can click on Airtable, right? And notice that Airtable is it's linked as a parent to Daily Startup. Why? Because it's something I use every day, right? It's part of my Daily Startup. And I chose in my own structure to set up the apps that are kind of linked to Daily Startup as parents of Daily Startup. Again, this is purely a choice. Somebody else might want to make them children, right? How do I make it a children? And here's how easy this gets to start moving things around and play with it, is if you look at any thought, there are these nodes. There's one on top, one on the bottom, one on the side. Now, the top node is to create a parent thought. The side is called a jump thought. And the bottom one, of course, is a child, right? So I decided to structure it where Daily Startup is a child of Airtable. And for that matter, if I click Daily Startup, you can see now how I've got, all the apps that are linked. These are the apps that I use every day, just about first thing. So Airtable, ClickUp, Google Calendar, Google Drive, Kajabi, Penzu is an online journal that I write in, strictly personal, just for me. But usually that's the very first thing I do. Notice I've got some of them linked up here in the actual Daily Startup thought.
Right.
And so just about every day, first thing, I've also got it bookmarked or pinned, they call it, up here. So just about every day, first thing, if I go in here and I'm in the home thought, I'll click up here, Daily Startup. And the first thing I'll do is right-click, open, go back to calendar, right-click, open, right-click, open. If I just click on them, they open up inside the Brain's own kind of browser. I want them opening in Chrome. So that's my choice for how I do it. But going back to the apps vetted thing, that's how you start to get context, and that's how I chose to structure it, is by taking from my Daily Startup thought and just linking as parents the apps that I use daily. But now I can drill back up to Airtable, back up to apps vetted, And again, this is not an exhaustive list yet, but these are some of the first ones that came to mind when I said, where are all the apps that I use regularly, that I tout, that I've that I would recommend to anybody easily, right? And you can start to see them all. Then I have apps research. So these are apps that I'm looking at, that I'm checking into. This one, notice, is lit up with today because this one I'm really looking at closely. I really like what these guys are actually doing. And I've and a lot of times what happens now, Rob, because I do so much of this kind of stuff, is I'll do a video on somebody's app and then they reach out to me. Right. Now that I'm doing this course in ClickUp, I've now heard from 2 people from ClickUp who want to talk to me about this course I'm doing about their product. Right. So it's interesting how that works. But anyway, so these guys at ZenKit sent me an email a few days ago saying, hey, we just rolled out, this is their new notebook application. So talking about Evernote, they're trying to create their own notebook application. They also have a to-do, and they also have a knowledge base app. They're trying to build, you familiar with Zoho?
Yes. Yep.
They're trying to do kind of like what Zoho has done, where Zoho has all of these different apps that all live in their ecosystem, and they kind of share a database on the back end somewhere. So you can use an app or not use an app in their ecosystem, but as you incorporate new apps from their ecosystem into your, account, that's what these guys are trying to do. As you choose to use the different apps that they offer, everything will get connected very seamlessly. Right?
Interesting. Yeah.
So anyway, that's just a little background on why this is lit up. But you can see these are ones I'm researching. And then I don't want to show it because I don't want to kind of slam anybody. But I have, you think about analysts on Wall Street and they issue recommendations of either buy, sell, or hold. So I put a sell recommendation on some apps, meaning no, dump it, don't use it. And so that's if I've done the research and I don't like what I see, then it kind of gets moved over to that pile.
That's really, again, it feels, at least the way that you work, the way that your mind works in the application of this, you've thought you're so thorough about how the system works. And we chatted before about maybe sketching out where would you decide, what problem how would you decide what problem you're solving with an app like this? How would you approach how you want it to work? What's the workflow? When you're thinking about how you might use an app and consider that. I personally I said to you, I always encourage people just to think about the process, even on a piece of paper. Mm-hmm. If you're talking about email marketing automation, what is when someone signs up, what do they get? Do they get a welcome email? And then what's the next email they get? And the next one, what do we want that to look like before we worry about technology? So talk to me about how you decided or figured out your workflow before you started something like this.
It's the quick answer is it's evolved, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't know instantly how I was going to do it. It's evolved. And a lot of it is frankly trial and error. I try something a certain way. And if I don't like the way it comes out, and here's the ultimate sort of acid test, I think, for all of this in a very generic way and it actually comes, this is interesting trivia. Were you an X-Files fan when that show was running?
I was not.
So at season 1, episode 1 of the X-Files, Scully and Mulder are having this conversation. They're both FBI agents, and they're kind of poking fun at the bureaucracy of the FBI. And throughout that episode, they make several references to how everything needs to be organized, categorized, and easily referenced, right? And but I've actually taken a page out of that show's book and apply that here. That's kind of the rule, is I want to figure out how to organize, categorize, and then most importantly, easily reference. Again, it's a knowledge base. The point of it is supposed to be, after I spend time putting knowledge and data into it, how easily can I get data out of it when I need it, right? So, and you talk about like even ROI, like I showed you some of my extreme bookmarking concept as applied in here. I get the email from somebody who's got an inquiry. They've signed up for the ClickUp course, but they didn't get the workbook, and now they want the workbook. I could hire a virtual assistant and forward those requests and let the virtual assistant go find the links that they need to send. But I don't have to do that now, because in less than 30 seconds, I can come into the brain, I can search for a course in ClickUp, and I have all the links right there at my fingertips. I can right-click a link, hit the reply button on the email and say, hey, thanks so much for your inquiry. Here's your link. Boom, send. Done. I'm out. So it saves time. It saves money. It's, there's a real world use case for this. But going back to your question, how do I outline something like that? Well, of course, you're going to start with a complete blank slate on this. And if we have time, I'm happy to just pop open a quick new tab in this and do that.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's take another few minutes and do that.
So here, the brain, as you can start to see, works a lot like a browser, right? So you've got your tabs across the top. I can even duplicate tabs so I can be in two different places of the same brain all at once, right? So let me just click up here at the top left where it says create a new brain. And I'm going to call this Owner Insider. And even as you're setting your brains up in here, you can there's areas you can go for ideas for how to get started. And one of the sort of breakdowns they give you is: are you trying to set up one brain for everything, or are you trying to set up a brain for a specific use case? And the answer could be either, right? So I don't want to waste time with like simple formatting stuff. I obviously have mine nicely formatted. I've taken the time to do that because, again, I want it to be an enjoyable experience for me to work in the product. And so I like to create those visuals. But as soon as I opened and created this brain, boom, we're here, we're off and running. Here's my home thought called Owner Insider. And here's the notepad that I get. And, as you can see, it's not the nice chalkboard green like I had. It's, but again, you start to play around and you figure out how to do these things, right? So now let's go marketing, right? I want to just create a marketing plan, right? And maybe I just want to, again, if I'm thinking big and global, then, and you can always repurpose things, right? So I might start with marketing, but then there's different aspects of marketing. So now let's do the marketing plan, which, by the way, another little trick on the brain, if I hit a comma space and then put the plan, right? And be creative, have fun with it. Notice what it does. The comma space kind of tells the brain, I want this to piggyback off of what it's attached to. So it does that for me. And now if I click back, again, and this is one of those things where it's because I actually take the time and pay attention to, they'll give you little tips whenever you log into the brain. And I think it's the kind of thing a lot of us tend to just click off of. I actually take the time and I learn this stuff because it makes the tool more useful to me when I learn these little tricks, right? And notice now if I click back on marketing, it just shows the plan. And so that kind of saves space. But at the same time, when I go in and I'm looking at this one, it becomes very clear that this is part of marketing. And notice it just titles the notepad based on whatever I titled the thought. And now I could say, okay, now I'm in the notepad here. And by the way, if I want to focus down here, there are little arrows. I always like to tell people these little things mean something. It's not like some designer just said, let me put a little triangle in there, right?
Right.
Click on it. It means something. Now I can focus on just these notes. Notice I have a nice little editor across the top. So I can do all kinds of things. And what I do is I encourage people to play with it. Click on something. Ask yourself, what does this do, right? And they have this nice little, what do you call it, markup language that you can use for formatting, or you can use, the actual editor here if you wanted to do different heading sub-levels. But I've learned it's faster when you start learning the markup code. So email marketing plan, and if I go back to the beginning and hit # space, it's like a level 3 header. Fantastic. And now I can say, let's work backwards. What is the last thing that needs to happen? Right, and maybe we'll make that a bullet point. Okay, enter tab, right? And let's work backwards. Somebody calls me, emails me. I had somebody ask me that when I was trying to come up with my marketing concepts, especially when I was starting to do YouTube videos. He was like, what do you want people to do? And I said, well, I want them to hire me. And he says, no, we got to be more specific. What specific action do you want them to take at the end of your video? And I said, well, I want them to call me. Great. Client or prospect schedules a discovery call, whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
I love that's a great question, by the way. Just as an aside, we often think, we're just out there sending stuff out and hoping for the best, but creating it with some level of intention to say, what do I want people to do when they watch this or click this or go to when they go to my website? Everyone sort of thinks they've got to have all these different tabs, but we really get to shape the experience based on what it is we most want someone to do when they get there. So I think it's a really excellent point to not miss. While you're doing this, I have a quick functional question. You had a whole list of brains on that homepage. Are those brains connected? Or is there a way to connect them all, or are you paring down? Like, what's the reason for having multiple brains versus one?
So I'll give you a perfect use case, but first let me answer the first question first. So the answer is you can link things from one brain to the next, right? If I'm in this Owner Insider brain now, and I go back out here, what I can do is let's go to the home thought. let's say I want to link this to my owner insider thought that's in my operating system brain. So I can right click and I can say copy local thought URL, because remember, this lives here in my desktop, but it's also on the web. It's synced, right? So I want to copy the local thought URL. I'm going to go into my own brain here. Okay, and then let me find owner insider. And I'm going to try something I haven't actually tried before, but let's say I just wanted to link that right here. Here's the attach option. Okay, and I can, it says paste web link. Let's see if that works. It looks like it did. It looks like it even put the brain icon in there recognizing. So let's click on it now from here. And boom, and it takes me right over. So you can create multiple brains and then easily link from one place to the other. So why would you want to have a separate brain as opposed to one brain for everything? Couple of reasons. Sharing. I can share a link directly to a thought on the web version of my brain, right? So like here's I notice I do have my brain open in 2 tabs. One of the things I do every day first thing is I take my fasting glucose, and here's the Excel file where I log it, right?
Yep.
Just something I like to do. And I've got some Google Drive stuff here that I link to. So again, it's extreme bookmarking, quick, easy access. But I can share things, and I can even make this thought private. So if I wanted to, I could share a link to this whole brain on the web, but then anything that I've made private won't be visible to people browsing on the web. Nice. So I could do that. But as this brain has grown for me, and among other things, I've accumulated a lot of personal stuff, like private stuff. I'm hesitant to want to share anything publicly in this brain for fear that I might have forgotten to make something private, right? Mm-hmm. So what I can do instead is create a new brain, and like I'm actually about to do, because my marketing coaches, I hate that word, but for lack of a better word, this week they advised me, because I have so many channels and tools and resources and things that people can sort of hire me to do or help them with, or courses they can sign up for. They want me to actually create a mind map of all the different entry points into my company. And so, I'm going to share it with them. So that I'm going to do in a separate brain, but then I'll probably go back into here, into my marketing, and let's use the search again to find that really quick. So marketing, and when you have a lot of stuff related to a term, just like searching on Google, you have to sometimes get a little bit more specific, right? So if I go back and type nerd marketing, it's pretty intuitive in terms of finding things. If for some reason, like now, it's not finding what I'm looking for, I also know how to browse to it sequentially. So I go home, nerd, right? And then it's because I had advertising, marketing, sales. By the way, that's a clue that I may want to retitle this and call it marketing.
Right.
Because I just learned that the way my brain by default functions, it's looking for marketing, not advertising or sales. But boom, so now I will create a thought in here that links over to the new brain I'm going to create, to map out all the different entry points. So I can share that one with them, have it linked into my own operating system. So all roads lead back there. And then finally, the other part of your question. So what are all these brains? Well, this one here is another separate resource I'm in the process of building. It's a knowledge base called the Accountant and Bookkeeper's Guide to the Galaxy. Same idea, but it's meant to be public facing, and there's advertising opportunities. So I've got sponsors that I'm lining up, right? Bilbies is an app that I work closely with. I'm actually on retainer with them, and I help them. And they kind of came to me with an idea that was very much overlapping with an idea that I had that has now become this resource. And actually, I'm pretty close to going live with this, and so here's a marketing tool for people where you can use the brain, because I can take this brain and I can embed it on a web page, or I can share links to it publicly, like I said, so anybody can access it. And by the way, it's got an awesome mobile app. So the idea here is if somebody wants to do some research on how to do marketing for their accounting practice, if they start typing marketing in the search, I have marketing in social media, I have LinkedIn, and right here, nice. I've done a thumbnail embed, which when they click on this will take them right out to a YouTube video that I've done on how to get clients on LinkedIn using ClickUp as a mini CRM, right? It's, one of those kind of long titled, very specific things. But now you're getting more ideas, hopefully, in terms of, how this can be used in a lot of different, very useful ways.
That's really great. I love it. I love it. I mean, and it answers the question perfectly, and then some, which is exactly what I expected from you, Seth, was to answer the question and then some always. Any last thoughts that you want to make sure that we take away from how you use this app, and how to encourage people to maybe give it a try?
Sure. So two quick things, because the other, part of the answer to the question about all these different brains, some of these are just different iterations of me creating brains that I eventually abandoned, and I renamed this one. This is what I was doing with it in 2018. I abandoned a lot of these and then picked up the brain again, I don't know, maybe in 2019 or 2020 sometime, and that's what the new operating system is. And then the other thing, the other sort of thought, no pun intended, that I want to leave people with on here is, kind of going back to the big picture question, where do I start? And again, talking about David Allen, you might start with something like this. I think it's just a really cool way to look at things. David Allen has this whole horizons of focus thing. And so you can start with something like this. I have resources linked in here, including PDFs that explain what this whole horizons of focus thing is all about. But really quick, it's just like the name suggests, different levels. The runway are things that are immediate needs, things I have to tend to right away. The 10,000 foot view is the current projects. 20,000 is general areas of responsibility. I'm a parent, I'm a child, I have whatever.
Yeah.
30,000 feet, 1 to 2 year goals, 40,000, 3 to 5 year, 50,000 feet, life goals. What do I want to accomplish before I leave this planet, right? You might even start by just laying out something like this, because as you begin to define, especially when you get to this first part, the immediate stuff, I think going through an exercise like this will give rise to very specific ways now that you'll immediately see, okay, this is how I can start using the brain, and just dive in, have a use case, and start learning how to use the tool around a real live use case.
I thank you very much for that, and that point you made earlier about how much time you put into how you use this, to figuring out how it works, I think can't be overstated. That we accept the default on so many things, our devices, and we just expect everything to be working for us. But you're constantly revisiting this to say, what else do I need to learn to serve so that this serves me better? And you've broken a few eggs as you were trying to make an omelet here, and abandoned some, and that was fine too. But now, I just think not accepting the default, whether it's your iPhone, whether it's this, whatever it is, Google Calendar. There's so many ways that the functionality can work to serve us, and I think it makes some sense to take time to learn how this app can help us, instead of just saying, well, I'm going to try this app and it's going to fix everything for me.
Yeah,
that'll never happen. So I think
if I can say two more quick things. One, as you mentioned, Google Calendar, I'm reminded this does integrate with your calendar app. And so when I click this icon up here, it reveals a timeline. So if I want to sync it with my calendar, it will show me calendar events here, which can easily be then associated with thoughts, so I can put more context around. But one warning about that, the reason you see mine isn't synced is because I have so much stuff on my Google Calendar that I got very cluttered very quickly, and I said, okay, no, I'm out. That's not going to work. The other thing I want to mention about this that I think is really important is one of the marketing gurus that I love to follow, I'm sure you know who he is Jay Abraham, right? You might have noticed he showed up when I started searching marketing, because I've got a lot of stuff in here based on things I've learned from him. He talks about how, speaking of apps, most of the way most of our apps that we use work are very linear, right? I have rows and columns, folders and subfolders. This is the reason I got the idea really for getting back into the brain was based on something Jay Abraham said in a webinar I was watching about how our relationships and the way we build our businesses is not linear. It's geometric. And that triggered, when I heard it enough times, it eventually triggered the thought in my own mind that that's what the brain's superpower is that it's very much geometric. And the last thought I want to make sure people, if you took nothing away from this up until now, the one thing I want to make sure you get is that I'm signed up for a webinar that these guys are doing later today that is based on how a writer, somebody who writes books for a living, might use the brain. I have no such use case ever expected, but I still want to attend the webinar because I know there's going to be some tips or tricks or things, and it's really
Absolutely.
outside the box. And you talk about geometric. This is how I learn and get ideas about more ways that I can use this that may have nothing to do really with their core topic, but it doesn't matter. I just pull things out of it. So I watch their webinars as often as I can, so I can just learn new ways. Like I showed you, that's how I learned about how to use the thought types to a really good effect. So.
That's perfect. I love looking outside your own, expertise into fields that aren't even really connected. I mean, you can make a case that it is, but to get inspiration and ideas for how to use this, I think that's great. So the app is called The Brain, and you can learn more about it or sign up for it. They have a free version at thebrain.com. Seth David is the owner of nerdenterprises.com. You could check out his YouTube channel as well. Or go to nerdenterprises.com. He's got a ton of courses and other information available for how to help you with so many different apps, but really mostly with getting your accounting and bookkeeping in order primarily, right?
That's been the core. Yes, that's been the core. Let's just keep it simple so we don't go on for another half hour.
We could. Like, Seth, thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you making the time and giving the time here to me to walk through this. I'm excited about it. Excited to use it.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. And of course, if you have any questions or need any help, you know where to find me. I'll be more than happy to help you.
Tell the people how to reach you other than nerdenterprises.com. Is that the best way?
Yeah, nerdenterprises.com. Long story short, what you'll find if you click any of the links on that homepage, they kind of redirect you to my newer site, which is at new.nerdenterprises.com. Anyway, you can use the contact form. You can call me. We even have a phone number you can send text messages to. People text me QuickBooks questions, and I'll answer them sometimes via text message. It's a fun way to interact and, frankly, build an audience or grow my audience. So,
great. All right. Thanks so much for being here. Take care.
Thank you.